Welcome to the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. Our dedication to living life joyfully allows us to confront the reality of unmitigated deception and political denial of the harm caused by nuclear and chemical contamination. We demand an end to corporate control of science and suppression of facts for political and financial gain. We are not assets on a balance sheet. We must honestly work together to remediate damage to benefit our planet and humanity. Remember, happiness is resistance, and love is greater than fear. Join the Age of Fission radio show on Spreaker.com. Search for Lonnie Clark for all our podcasted shows. Podcasts are also on YouTube at nutzforart. nutzforart. Thank you for being part of the solution. Hey, thank you for joining us. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show, and I am here with the star man with his head down, Mr. Thomas Ackermann. And,
hello, Lon.
He's up in Canada in his art studio, and we decided that we were going to record our radio interview that we're going to do together. But we're going to do it on YouTube, and I'm going to post it up to YouTube. And so, welcome, Tom, to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure being with you. I enjoy talking with you whenever I can.
Yeah, well, thanks. Well, for those of you who are new to our show, I've been doing this show for a couple of years now. Thomas Ackermann actually came up with the name, the Age of Fission radio show. He actually was the one.
I so love the fact that Lonnie still is carrying it on. It's like Age of Fission. We're in the Age of Fission. Yeah, fantastic.
There's
actually a radio show called Age of Fission.
Next month, it's going to be, how long? It was 3/11/11. We are now in 3019. We're 8 years in, and TEPCO now says, well, we'll be able to start. We're beginning to touch it. Like, ooh, we can send a robot in to squeeze it to see if there's something there. That's the big, great news. That's the advance. This is how so far out of their head. They really are so over their head with nuclear technology. I don't believe, this is why I think that we should not have it. Because they don't know we shouldn't have it in use. Like John Goffman said, yes, study it, but don't put it into public use.
It's living a nightmare without actually knowing you're in the nightmare. It's like waking up. You know, at least when you wake up from a dream, you had a nightmare. This is like a nightmare that nobody knows they're living. You know what I mean? It's like that sort of feeling. And even like you and I talking, right? It seems fairly normal.
Right.
But as we talk, these billions of toxic elements are being released every second, right? It's like continuous.
This is the
8
thing.
years.
People, I think that for me, what I've had this like come to Jesus moment, the realization after doing all these many interviews with all the activists that are really, and when I first got into this, I came to YouTube and looked because I didn't see anything on mainstream media openly. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything openly. So I went to YouTube. And that's how I found Kevin Blanch. He seemed like the only person who was talking about the truth about it, right? So,
with a bit of passion too.
Yeah, and honestly, and with honesty about like, look what they're doing to me. My dad was a nuclear veteran. I'm a nuclear. And then I started looking around. There are actually organizations. There are thousands of people, not many, but there are thousands of people who are pushing back. Like, but it is not enough. And it is a little, like this morning I read an article that said TEPCO, they won 152 families, I think it was, in Japan, won a lawsuit that said that TEPCO has to pay them $3.8 million. Now, do the math. That's like $24,800 per family.
Peanuts. Yeah, it's nothing. It's a spit in the bucket. Yeah, I see.
I mean, it's an insult, actually. It's insult to injury. These people lost everything. And the denial of the contamination and the ongoing harm to people's health. Not just them, their children, their grandchildren. Like us, our grandchildren. I know I was born in Los Angeles in 1955. You know what I mean? I was around the Santa Susana nuclear meltdown. I mean, we were affected, and I can guarantee you, like, things happen in your families medically that people now, the AMA has no interest in finding out the harm. How many comments do you get on your videos, Tom, where people say, oh, no harm was done, no people died, 13 people died in Fukushima from radiation, and that's it.
You know, what's really ironic, a while back, a couple of years back, I came across an organization called Mothers for Nuclear.
Yes, I know who they are. Yeah,
there's a couple of.
They're up in Kennewick. They're Hanford moms. They're up there because they're fully invested.
Totally on a
Heidi
paycheck.
Lambert and I talk about this because she knows some of those people. She's from that area. You should go.
She knows the women. She knows the women that run this thing. They actually post stuff and are very serious about their position, or they appear very serious. Well, I don't.
They're quite well paid. Let's just put it this way.
I'm
Their
sure they
families
are.
make a lot of money from nuclear. There's people that. This is the thing. I can honestly say I'm not anti-nuclear. I see the benefit and the idea of it, but until we figure out the process, of remediating and stopping what we have right now, because we've done already a lot of damage. All the bombing and the 2000 bomb testing that they did to us in the 50s and the 60s, like it's immeasurable when you think about the consequences of how that's the sterility it's already causing.
Well, Lonnie, the idea of being anti-nuclear is antithetical. Everything is nuclear. What is not everything is fission. Fission is man-made. Fission is not nuclear in the sense of what we are. I'm not anti-pro-nuclear. Nuclear is everything, apparently. I mean, I'm not a physicist, but nuclear is everything. The sun apparently is fusion. It's a form of nuclear, right? The thing that's not right is fission. Fission doesn't make sense. It's man-made, and it's a nightmare.
That's why we're in the age of fission, because it's going to take...
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
But then again, who was I talking to? Was it you that talked to me about the plastics? I was talking to somebody about... See, this is the interesting thing about those of us that are finding out how seriously badly contaminated our planet is. Like, yeah, I am a baby boomer, but you know what? I kept my nose to the grindstone. I was like everybody else. I just went to work. I supported my 2 kids by myself, raised them in Los Angeles, worked 1, 2, 3 jobs at various times. You know what I mean? I believed everything. I mean, I could see the political corruption. I personally knew, like, if you went to D.C., your family would probably be getting the contracts from the government and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? You just know the nepotism is going to happen. You can see it. Everybody greases each other's palms. But I had this idea that those people that went to Washington actually did it for the benefit of the people, and not either out of corruption or coercion. Because I think, like, my own Senator Jeff Merkley, I think he knows in his heart of hearts. I've actually looked him in the eye. I went to meet him and asked him and talked to him about Hanford. And I talked to him about Fukushima. And his little aide was like, oh, well, he has to go now. He has to go. And I just stuck to, and he kind of like allowed me to talk to him. You know what I mean? She was trying to get me to go. But I used my full 5 minutes. I was kind of giving him, you wait in line with your senators, and it's like you're given the grace before the Pope. Oh, yes, sir. Oh, we will talk to you, my dear. You know what I mean? But well,
here's, you know, Lonnie, I think that, you know, when I have a discussion or when I talk to you, I think there are very good channels out there that cover the issues that we're facing. And obviously between you and I, the most important issue is this nuclear pollution that is unleashed on us.
Fukushima is like still the worst thing in the world.
It is what I call...
This is the thing, it has not unleashed itself yet. They're still managing it, so-called managing it. What happens when something happens when they can't manage it? When we have like a 7.0, a 9.0 earthquake, or an 8.0 earthquake?
I think there was an earthquake just a few days ago, actually.
I mean, a big one. What happens when the plate shifts really shift over? We're having big, you know... And
not just Fukushima. You've got many other plants that are just teeter-tottering.
Right here.
Exactly. All those...
Oregon
the reality
and Washington are on a state of emergency alert for earthquakes.
And you have a flood or something, and you saw with Fukushima the generators were taken out by the water that flooded them, so they couldn't cool it anymore.
This is what I call the proximity factor. When that happens here on the West Coast, Hanford is going to have a fire that will not be able to be put out for 700,000 years. They will not likely be able to prevent it somewhere on that reservation because they have tanks that need to be churned 24 hours a day.
Can I redirect our conversation a little bit?
Yes.
Our
audience would be very grateful for that. So I want to thank the people that are joining us here on the Age of Fission radio show. We're here with Thomas Ackermann, world-renowned artist who hails out of Toronto, Canada. Correct, Tom?
Or close by, yeah.
Close
I'm
by.
near Toronto.
He's very well known in Toronto. He's been at the Toronto Museum of Art, and he's quite a well-known artist. So I appreciate him, and we've been friends since we got into this through the Post-Ignorance Project, which we're no longer associated with, but it's still going on.
Frankly, I to some extent, I've been blacklisted in my own community. I do have some exposure, but not what I would like, because there's a very difficult. What is that? It's when you. It's not even so much raising certain issues. It's like just a personality that. If you're committed to something, you have a passion, you have a personality, it comes through, and people get very uncomfortable with that. I think like curators, supposedly in the art system, have an obligation in a sense. They're the forefront of openness, supposedly, because art is all about being free to do what it is that comes to a person, right? When you express yourself, the notion of making a painting or a sculpture or being creative is that you're free, right? The idea of freedom. And this is an irony because the most rigid, stuck-up bunch are the curators and the critics. It's quite amazing, but not to me anymore, because I think culture fundamentally has as its backbone this conformity. It's quite brutal, and we get hijacked into thinking that you go to a museum. I don't know last time you went to an art show or something that is official. I'm talking like about mainstream big museum. Like you got a place in Oregon. You got like in Eugene. You got a major museum there.
Yeah,
what's it called?
We have quite a strong art culture here. There's always art shows here. A lot. You can go to an art show practically any day of the week here.
Now you're going to end up scratching your head a lot. You know, a lot of people have like itchy scalps that go to art shows these days, because we're confronted with stuff that absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. And there is a reason for that. There's a reason for that, because
but they've been taught that in school, that's the expression of their being.
Yeah, well, that's also that the teachers that are teaching art are so removed from actually doing it themselves that they haven't got a clue anymore, and they just regurgitate, as far as I'm concerned, a company line. They go into maybe even classics, and they regurgitate the stuff that they're supposed to talk about, all the major artists who have no significance or meaning to these innocent souls that are sitting there. And they say, well, the world is going to ratchet, and you're telling me about, Rembrandt and the significance of Rembrandt. What's the point of that? What's the point of that? So they end up doing this dysfunctional, idiosyncratic, spectacled work that has no relationship to their life or anyone else's life. So people are like scratching their heads when they're looking at this stuff, right? The same way you and I, we're confronting this epic problem. Okay, like I feel totally overwhelmed, by the way. I have no idea personally what to do, like in terms of this thing.
That. Like people say, well, what should we do? My advice, eat well, be happy, and be good to the people. Be kind to everyone. Be kinder to yourself. That's my solution. Be kinder to yourself. Right. Be kinder to everybody. Eat well. Treat your body better. Do the best you can, because I don't know the science, but I do know the effects of what it's going to do. And the only way around that, the end game of that for us individually, is appreciate what we have, because we really have no idea how long we're going to have it. The circumstances are, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, we are in the most epic period that humanity has ever been in. I agree. Some people argue with me and they say, well, every generation or every millennium or every century has this feeling of
specialness of doom and gloom. But I actually think this isn't like you could establish, the volcanoes go off and maybe every 100,000 years there's like a major fire on Earth and everything is eradicated. We're in one of those circumstances, I think, that is not just a millennium or 100-year. It's like epic on the planet, right?
Several hundred
That's my
years.
conclusion.
I mean, I think I agree with you, but this is the thing. See, if to me the finality, there's no finality. I mean, I personally believe that we're evolving. Like whether humanity survives or not on this planet, like we're all together. It's like my thing. I think I'm kind of ranging all over the place, so I'm just going to get down to the nutshell. I think that the gift of our planet is love. I firmly believe that. Like the thing that we have on this planet is the power of love. And I think our thoughts are things. And I think we have the capacity to think our way. And it's not just the power of positive thinking. I just think on a quantum level. So I don't believe that there's no solution for the nuclear contamination and the chemical. I don't believe that we can't remediate that. I think our goal is to restore Mother Earth.
I agree with you. Some people might call it a hope because I don't see a light at the end of this tunnel necessarily, but I believe there is a solution as well, which is what
how you get to the
me.
light at the end of the tunnel? You keep walking in the dark. You keep going forward.
Falling over.
You keep sludging through whatever it is. If you're in a cave, a dark cave, and you know that somewhere out there where you're headed is the outside, you head in that direction, and you will find the light at the end of the tunnel. You just if you sit in the cave, you're gonna die and go extinct. Like that's what I think. Like right now, we are in an epic time. We tripped into this nuclear catastrophe arrogantly. After World War II, they went, woohoo, let's go. And they, without regard to the harm, they suppressed all the science, all the medical studies that said it was super harmful because they're super greedy. This is a fat cash cow. TEPCO has to pay these families less than $50,000. I mean, they don't even get $100,000.
Yeah, it's like an insult. It's offensive. I mean, we can go into all the sort of misdeeds that are occurring right under our noses every day.
Open greed. This is the thing. So now I think that the evolution. I think we're coming across. We're going to have to. We are confronting. We're not going.
Okay, let's talk about this evolution. This is, I think, something I can contribute to this thing that we're going through in terms of why do I have hope that there is a solution, right? I mean, we can listen to all the facts, what I've said, lots, the information is all out there. It's debilitating, quite frankly. I find all the facts and the information. I have it within me now. I may not have the specifics and the ability to regurgitate all the facts perfectly. Some people are fabulous at it, but I'm not interested in that. I've never been interested in the facts in that way. What I'm interested in for myself, I'll talk about myself, and that is my own direction is tied very much into what I feel to have a birthright. So this is being taken away from me. It's being taken away from us, right? So in my understanding of what it is that I could contribute, and I'm like past 60, I'm 66, so I've gone through a bunch of stuff. I've done stupid things, and I've done some smart things. And one of the smart things I've done is to be as true to this feeling of birthright that I have as much as I can, right? Okay, so for me, it's making paintings, okay? It's making paintings. Now, paintings, there have been a lot of people talking about art as like, from the point of view of decoration, they think in terms of art as something that, okay, you can treat it that way. It's a wonderful flower on the wall. And it's like people relate to their world out there from the point of view that everything is okay. But I've never felt this way. I've always felt there was something wrong. And if this is like an illusion, well, then you can just discard whatever I say or I do. But I'm firmly convinced the reason I'm making paintings is because I always felt that something wasn't right. Something wasn't right. And every great artist in history has always felt there was something wrong. Like if you listen to Émile Zola's and Jacques Few's, when he defended Dreyfus, there was something fundamentally wrong in society, right? Okay, so my position, Lonnie, is like I'm asking you even in terms of your own life. How do you activate this feeling that you have? Everybody has it. We have a birthright, and how do we follow that through? Where do we get to a point where we become more truly ourselves than, as much as we can be before we die? And I think, for my part, that is a major, important solution to the problem we're facing. That as long as people are living someone else's life, it's like culture directs us, funnels us into a very narrow path early on. Like imagine children, they're just born a few days old and they get vaccinated right away. This is one of the atrocities committed against my birthright. I mean, I think I had 3 or 4 vaccinations. That's all I had when, in the 50s when I was born.
We didn't get
I think I got smallpox and, the bump on the side, yeah. Right? So it wasn't as ubiquitous. Yes. Now you're 15 years old and you had 60 vaccinations. It's an atrocity.
You're 3 months old. They want to give you 17 vaccinations at 3 months old.
I mean,
they want to give you a vaccine so you don't get HIV when you become sexually promiscuous as a teenager. Like, it's ridiculous.
How can we get this sorted out in ourselves when everything works against us? So when I do my videos and I talk to a few people that still talk to me, I don't get involved in the specifics. Like if I talk to somebody and say, we're in an epic time of destruction, by design, by the way, I think it's an extermination, but I can't even broach that topic because people say you're an idiot. I don't do it. But what I do channel the conversation into is that, number one, as an artist, I have a fight. It's like my birthright is to actually acknowledge that something isn't working. And we all personally have to understand, really feel that something isn't working. And what is it? And how can I make it better just through the person that I am,
okay,
right?
Tom, so I think this is the thing. This is the key. In fact, I think this has been a big issue that I found personally in when I come across people. And it was in my life, and it was probably... the interesting thing, in a way, some of the worst things that happen to us are the best things because they force us to really question the value of our lives and look at and examine ourselves. And you get a choice to improve or stay the same, and or degrade. Actually, you don't just stay the same; you'll degrade if you're not improving, I think. But so, for me, like the whole Fukushima thing, which has been, people say, well, how do you have the energy to do it? Well, because I feel very compelled that we are ignoring the elephant in the room. Fukushima is going on for 8 years now, nonstop. It's worse than ever. They haven't really cooled it down. It's not fixed. They don't have a solution. They don't really know where the fuel is. They honestly have fewer answers than understanding. You know what I mean? They really are just now they're getting a grip on what happened after 8 years. They're just now getting a grip. They're pretending that who knows what it is that's or something. But this is the thing: the people of that area and the people of Japan are still being victimized.
But the thing is, what you said
along with all of us.
You've picked a fight, right? You're picking a fight with some very nasty people.
I did not pick a fight. They picked.
Well, you're in a fight. You're in the fight for your life and every life form on this planet. It's like
I look at it as this: like we came into this time. I aspire to this idea that we're circular souls, that we live on a spiritual level and we choose to manifest physically to help us attain pure love. I think that's what I mean. Like when I say the purpose of life on this planet is love, that's what I think it is. I think the purpose of life on this planet is to manifest.
But you have to put
love.
Something practical to that idea. For me, it has to be attached not just as a concept.
It is
but something
attached
that's real.
to the real idea of self-love is actually a practice. You have to, in order for you to love and be authentic with yourself, you have to practice true self-love, and that means like practice more kindness towards yourself and towards others, and harmony towards your environment. And if you do that, you can eliminate a lot of things that are violent out of your life. Like, part of the reason, like, we can't, for me, like the organic farming, they say, well, how do we know that it's only the animals that are suffering pain? How do we know the plants don't really suffer pain by being genetically mutated, and mega cropped and without any regard for tenderness and love? Like, when people have a farm, I've thought about this since I've been in Oregon, because I've only been exposed to it here as opposed to having been reared and lived my entire life in Los Angeles, right? And in the South, I lived in New Orleans and LA. The food has a different sense of quality. So I think we're just, again, being arrogant. This whole, I think it's about honoring our earth, our supply, our system, who we are. Nothing is one answer for anything. There isn't one way or another. There's multiple answers. What we're not discovering is how to stay authentic with ourselves. We backslide because it's easier, or we get coerced or intimidated. These scientists who want to speak out go, well, I'll ruin my pension. As if that matters. It's ruining your pension.
Okay. No, I follow. I know exactly what you're saying, but my thought on this as well is, for this not to be just a mantra in a person's life. I know it's not for you because you're actually living. When I say a fight, it's not a bad thing to be in a fight. It's like, especially if it's a good fight, right? It's like, if you're actually going to make, if you're actually going to hold somebody account for their misdeeds. I think this is a very important, it's a noble thing. It's a noble thing to be engaged in a fight. And I'm not talking about like punching somebody in the face. I'm talking about having a personal commitment to making something better than the way it is. Mm-hmm. This is like an important thing for everyone to figure this out. That's why I say, you don't have to do Fukushima and nuclear. Just pick a fight. Make the world around you, me, immediately a better place, whichever way you can do that. And the highest form for myself, again, I can only talk for myself, is to find this something within myself that says, I'm doing the right thing.
You know what you do with your art? This is how artists change. So this is why you can't, people go, well, you're so political, Tom, or you're always talking about this. The thing is, artists think that when you're saying, I really appreciate you saying you always thought that things weren't right. And I think that's the mission of a real artist. Like, you're putting into artwork the emotions. Like, when someone looks at one of your pieces of artwork that reflect a statement on any of these ideas that you've painted, whether it's the picture of Che on that bed, or, you know what I mean, that one that you had, like, the way you make the statement about that whole scene is summarized in one painting. And it brings people to an emotional state that forces them to say, maybe something's not right here. You know what I mean?
Well,
it puts a crack in the machinery, like the Fukushima paintings that you did, right? Those are
by the way, I cannot get those into the public domain whatsoever. I squeezed a few in with other shows, but it's almost impossible to get any interest on that.
Right. Well, people, they know that there's millions of people at risk who are, like, it's kind of like talking about the people in St. Louis. Same way.
Or they say it's irrelevant. Or they say, this is not an issue. It's been shown that they're in control and they have figured it out.
And people are not being
it's not even like Chernobyl. It's not even close to what Chernobyl was. All that kind of like stuff that's been implanted in the brains, right? But you just said something about, like, for me to be able to feel like, what is it that makes me get up in the morning, really? And honestly, to have that sense of, what is that? That I guess it's sort of like a meaning in my life, right? There's so many levels of meaning, from relationships to what you say about eating healthy, and like the idea of doing the right thing is very high up for me on giving me a meaning, like a sense of, it's like a sense of fulfillment, that if I can choose the right thing. And people argue about this. Like, you know what? You could probably trace this very easily, philosophically, back to something like Plato and Aristotle. Plato was actually, for me, a very high level of being, whereas Aristotle is the guy who created a logic. He created fixed forms for us, basically through the senses, whereas Plato said, you know what? Life is like a shadow. We're experiencing just the shadow of our experience. Mm-hmm. Do you know the difference? Like we took paths, right? It's like people choose, and philosophically speaking,
but that goes back to the self-love.
We've chosen the Aristotle path. We've chosen Aristotle.
But that's
right?
also the materialistic, the whole But I actually think, this goes back to the whole spiritual being. Like, this is where I think that, at least in our culture, because I'm not part of another culture other than the Western culture, I think what's been lost is that sense of, this is where I call it self-love. Maybe it's authenticity or whatever that is like actually just being who you are in the moment and understanding that your gut is telling you to do the right, and it's okay for you to do the right thing even though you're afraid. It's like that walking through the cave gets you to the light at the end of the tunnel. We have lived in a culture that told people to just sit in the cave and wait for somebody to bring the light. Someone's going to come back with some fire, and you wait here. Show. Right.
Yeah,
you wait here, and we'll bring you fire, and we'll bring you food. No, that's not how life actually sustains itself. And so
culture is basically those shadows on the wall.
Well, it's like the thing with the nuclear and even the chemical. Like, I'm beginning to comprehend how big the contamination period is. So it's like this guy earlier, I didn't even get into that. I thought it was you, but someone was talking to me about the plastics. Oh, my friend Trish. We were talking about the plastics, how many 3 million tons of plastic a day are produced or something like that still. Some gigantic number. And the plastics actually will stick around for like 100,000 years. And they never really break down. They break into little tiny tiny particles of plastic. And
do you remember what George Carlin said? He had a comedy routine, and he said in 100,000 years, it'll be the earth plus plastic. This is like, what was his big...
unfortunately, that sounds... so then where's your level? That's what she was saying. Like, well, does it really matter whether, this is why they're making billions and trillions of dollars in the nuclear industry. Because these are gigantic projects. They take a lot of security. They take a lot of care. Most of the time they can run safely, but in the meantime, they're super costly and someone gets super rich. As opposed to putting up some windmills where you just put them up and they just run forever, and you know what I mean? Nobody makes a lot of money. That's why they don't like the alternatives, the wind and the solar, because it's not a continual source of like sucking money out of the ratepayers.
Okay, now again, I am not really big on the practical side of things from the point of view of the facts, okay? But here's what people really dislike me for, or what I say that people dislike me. I say the toxicity comes from within primarily. So the reason we have a really shitty external toxic world is because we are toxic on some level. We represent ourselves in this existence. This mystery that we're a part of is a reflection, literally, of what we're like inside, right? So the fundamental fight, for me, something is wrong. It's something wrong in me that I first of all have to clear out. I have to fix this. I have to fix myself. And I am proceeding.
I don't know if it's
I get confirmation.
It's like reconciling with yourself. See, it's like the same message. It's about self-love and self-care. It's about you reconciling.
I can't love myself until I fix it. I can't love myself truly. We have to fix ourselves.
Well, you're not going to just we're not just fixed, right? It's a process. It is a daily walk.
Yeah, no doubt. It's not, right? I know magic wand on fixing stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why you get up and do your artwork. Right? Because think of it, as an artist, how many pieces of artwork do you have? And you're compelled to keep making them. At what point?
It's a process. I develop, I evolve, I change, I think differently. My early work is a bit fluffy on some level.
Hey, I have a question to ask you.
Huh?
So if, let's say, magically the world would get created according to Tom and we had harmony in the world the way you thought it ought to be, do you think you'd still do your artwork?
as long as there's scotch, I think that I probably would. I would find a reason. But as long as there are cigars and scotch, I would most likely end up making a painting.
Okay.
But seriously, I would say that the reason this is I just finished a show that I said I have a romance with eternity, and I think this is, regardless of the state of affairs around me in the world, I have a romance with eternity, which is like my motivation fundamentally to take a breath every morning, because I have this notion of a innate connection with something. I can't say exactly what it is. Religions like to call it God, or they want to do some kind of mystical thing around it. All I know is that we're in a mystery, like we exist in a mystery, right? I have no explanation for it, and it's not going to stop just because there's, like, I don't know, when you say if everything was fixed, it's not a matter of things being fixed. It's feeling the connection to this mystery is so motivating and incredible that fixed, we can try and fix things that are wrong, but there is such a big picture here when you talk about an eternity that we're somehow part of. Like when we die, what happens when we die? Nobody knows. Nobody's ever come back. Houdini never came back, as far as I know anyway. He said he'd come back.
Well, there's some people that have come back. I mean, there's plenty.
Who's come back? Who's come back?
I mean, there's plenty of people who have died on the operating table and came back. There's plenty of those stories.
Oh, all right. Here's
and
my
then there's
vision
plenty of people who, like in India, where people they have remembered their reincarnated lives, and people have remembered their own reincarnated lives.
Okay. All right. Without disrespect, all I can say is this is, if a person has had an experience, interpretation of something that we experience. I mean, look at a painting and you have 5 people and you have 5 different experiences of something, right? What is the absolute within an experience? And I hear this over and over. Oh, I was gone dead and I went to the light. I saw the light at the end of whatever, this brilliant light. You know what I think that is? How I interpret that? I haven't had that experience, but I would say you're coming into existence. You're not seeing the other side. You're seeing the energy, the light that is our existence as we are. We're coming back. That's my thought on it anyway.
Now that's a good thought. I like that idea. That's
what you're experiencing as far as I'm concerned. That's how I'd interpret it. So the point is, I'm not going to argue with somebody about their conviction, what this might mean, eternity. All I'm saying is acknowledge it, and don't give me your dogma. I don't want to dogmatize. It's like to a person that says, how we get into trouble. I don't have these discussions anymore with people that are so fixated on something being specifically this, when we know it is so
multifaceted.
Yeah. We have no way of understanding this, but we're part of it. This is fabulous. It's like we have no choice. We're part of this thing,
we
right?
are part of it, yeah.
We're part of it. But
our understanding of our part of it is not the end-all, be-all. It's kind of like what I was telling you about plants, earlier. I think that the plants, I really believe this, like the plants that are part of the industrial farming industry suffer as much as the animals in the industrial farming industry. I think that the plants suffer and feel pain. I think there's a certain level of consciousness at a level that we don't comprehend, just because we can't identify it on our own understanding of what makes emotions and feelings. I think it's so incomprehensible, because this is a thing, our ability to manifest life and love is integral. We're not separated from the animals and from all these other reproducing creatures on this planet. We're not separated from
so what are you going to eat?
Well, you have to eat what you are going to eat. There's people that eat the blood of their cows and keep their cows alive. I don't know. You know what I mean?
So
it's a cultural. This is the point here. It's cultural, and I think people need things at different parts in their lives. It really it's about, I think that if people could just make this one change, keep the chemicals out of your body. as much as possible. The toxins, the chemicals, nothing out of a box, nothing out of a can. Like, just eat real whole food, whatever that is, wherever you're at in the culture that you're in, and move through it and honor every single thing that enters your body with love.
Here's the beautiful thing about, okay, if you talk about the sensitivity on plants, I think it's been proven that plants actually respond to their environment very directly. I think this is something even scientists, the white coats that I don't have much regard for, have understood. There is a response a plant will have. If you go up to a plant apparently and start screaming and shouting with a whole lot of anger, this plant does not respond very well. It's, okay. But you know what I find this fascinating? That the thought that happens for me is when you talk about the suffering of any other life form, is that there is some part of this mystery that is intimately connected to sacrifice. Like, you know, this Christian story about they nailed this guy on a stick, right? The Jesus story, totally misinterpreted as far as I'm concerned. This has not been really understood by anyone that proclaimed their knowledge of God. How the hell would they know what God thinks? You know, it's like to have that kind of he wrote it down in a book, and there were like 10 commandments because 5 dropped. You know, remember that Mel Brooks thing? He comes down the mountain,
to
Moses.
Me, it's all part of the same Judaic, Islam, Christianity, all the same religion.
The same stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, let everybody have their thing. But what I find really quite extraordinary is the idea of sacrifice. So that, you know, you said you had experiences that you suffered through, but in some way you implied made you a better person, right?
Well, they helped me grow. They helped me increase my compassion. And actually, at sometimes, the interesting thing is some of those events, it would have appeared that it made me I actually didn't really respond authentically with myself after some of those events happened. I've had kind of a lot of trauma in my life, right? So I conformed. I just conformed. I didn't do what I thought I should do. I did what everybody else said. That living inauthentically led to other things, but the key is when you learn to live authentically, everything that you go through, you begin to really appreciate it. Because
but your experience wasn't an easy one. This is what I'm saying.
No, and right? I think that our lives, that's when you have the challenges. Look, you don't need courage when things are easy. You need courage when things are difficult, right?
Of course. Yes. And what I'm saying, though, that there is a level of Lonnie Clark who has sacrificed in order to, right? Like the idea, the Jesus story isn't a guy nailed on a stick because some bastards who ran the show didn't want him around. It's the idea for me that there is this element of this mystery that includes a version of sacrifice. So if a plant or an animal, if you're eating animals still, I would highly recommend don't eat animals that come through the slaughterhouses because they've been so abused. The energy that is left in that matter that is that animal is so toxic. And all you're getting is the toxins from that creature.
That's true. Now, the nutritional value of those animals is extremely low.
Way down. This is like, it's a 101. I don't need a big explanation around this. This is something that makes so much sense to me. So we do not need this level of toxicity. But I still feel like people are confronting, saying, oh, you don't eat meat, but plants feel too. I'm saying eat meat. We have to survive. I haven't understood how to just live on air. So this sense of appreciating the sacrifice, like in my own history as an artist, there are people that went before me that did incredible stuff for me. I see this like an extended family that have given something to me. They've given me permission through their sacrifice. And I'm not going to waste that. I'm going to make good on that. That's how I look at the situation. That it's like, I don't know.
To be clear, Tom, can I ask you some questions about your life as an artist? We have about 5 minutes left. Do you have time to continue this conversation, or do you need to get scooting?
I have time.
Because I'd like to not cut off the conversation and let it go. Okay, good.
Lonnie, I think that everything is for a reason. Fundamentally, everything, the way you look, the way I look, everything has its purpose, like to the most minute, microscopic level of our existence. Everything is so perfect. And then what is introduced, and here is my issue. This is something that gives me a lot of motivation and trepidation, is that it's up to us, because all we know is you and me. We know us. We don't know lilies in the field or cows. We know you and me, right? So you and me is everything. That's how I look at it. And the control that I have in making things better is me. It's not anybody else. It's not telling what anybody else should or shouldn't do, but is actually being, I come back to this, the birthright that we all carry within us should not be undermined on the most fundamental level.
How do you identify the birthright? So fundamentally, what do you think the birthright is? Clean air, clean water?
Well, okay, you can take it to the level of the external world. If you can go, I can have a discussion. I am much more interested in that inner world that separates, for whatever reason.
You mean the birthright to follow your own heart and create your own life, however it is that you want, without other people defining how you should live.
Yes, and I don't love myself until I've recognized something within me that is actually valuable. You can't just love yourself because...
Now that's true, because you know what happens with that, Tom? That makes sense, because this is why the corporations, that's why they squashed that whole self-help movement in the late 80s, or 90s, I guess it was because as people move into, people were less inclined to want to go do these horrible jobs at these entry-level jobs and work for these companies for nothing. They were more entrepreneurial, so people are squished into a box on purpose to keep the dogs of the wheel going, right?
They're given meaning.
But see, this is the gift. Like your gift is also your dedication to your own passion. That's another part of you. I mean, you are a talented artist, but I have to say, I've contemplated this now many times when I've thought about you as an artist. I've known you for about 5 years now. You've lived your life as an artist. That's been your career. You haven't worked in a restaurant and waited tables and done whatever you could do to be an artist. You actually did manifest earning enough money to live as an artist.
For over half of my life, yeah.
Right. So that actually is a huge commitment to yourself. That's also a gift. And
even what's even more amazing about that is I have some teachers and friends that did it much better than I did, but considering that my work fundamentally opposes the very essence of what culture is propagating. Like, if I make a painting, it's fundamentally over the last, I would say, since Fukushima especially, but even before, if I make a painting, there has to be a piss-off part of it. Like, I want to bug somebody so badly. Like, this is my feeling.
Okay,
I want to bug somebody, but not from the point of view that you hate the work. I seduce people into enjoying something, but on some level, there has to be this antagonism that challenges the toxicity that is, within all of us. Like, we are all toxic on some level that we have to cleanse ourselves. And art, believe it or not, I think art is the most effective tool for inner cleansing. Other than maybe, I don't know if you meditate or something, but art is a fabulous tool to initiate that inner cleansing thing. And I do it to myself by surprising myself with what I manage to put out sometimes. And it's not an easy thing from the point of, okay, you say, okay, you've been doing it for so long and you're talented. I actually am not very talented, Lonnie. My teachers early on said you're clumsy.
No, I meant your talent. Not that you aren't talented, but I meant part of your gift is the fact that you have been dedicated to doing it. Like, you actually... Well,
that's a decision. I had discipline, and my parents taught me discipline, actually. I give credit to my father, and especially because he was very... the work ethic part was huge. Like, I resisted it. You wouldn't believe. I got hammered from him quite often on my work ethic, and it finally sunk in. that there was a great deal of value in that sort of attitude, to have like a work ethic that you get up and say, well, I feel like hanging out with my buddies, but I'm supposed to do this, so
right. Well, that's
I got
called going to work. Exactly, that's called work. Exactly.
My father.
Look, we have about a minute left, Tom, in this hour of the show. You've been listening to Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show with my guest, world-renowned artist Thomas Ackermann. I think we're going to take a quick break and record maybe, I don't know, a whole segment, but a portion of a segment of a show, because I'm not finished with this conversation. Tom said he has time. So, Tom, let's take a little 5-second break, and we'll come back. Thank you for joining us. Put your courage feet on. We'll talk to you guys soon. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of my interview with Thomas Ackermann. Now I want to play for you last Friday's Fuuka Friday video on YouTube with Dave Parrish. That's DaveParrish on YouTube. It's called Fuuka Fridays. Here you go. Enjoy your weekend.
8 minutes to 8 years of TEPCO's lies. It's finally catching up to them, in court at least. What does this mean for the victims of the Fukushima nuclear disaster? Let's find out. Hey y'all, it's Dave here from Operation Save the Earth, and this is the Fuuka Friday Happy Hour Hangout for February 22nd, 2019. The latest news out of Japan this week, other than Prime Minister Abe's call for Donald Trump to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize,
what you talking about, Willis?
is another loss for TEPCO in the court of law over their disastrous handling of information regarding what happened in March of 2011. Right from the jump, they lied about the triple meltdown and how it would impact local communities and the world at large. And even before that, the mob-run company was loath to ever presuppose that an accident of that kind could or would occur at the nation's largest, oldest nuclear facility. But one monster earthquake and a 2-story tall tsunami later, the Fukushima No. 1 nuclear plant fell victim to its company's own hubris as the worst industrial accident in history began to unfold. Now, flash forward ahead 8 years, and people who've had to evacuate that area have been fighting for justice and recompense ever since. And now they're finally getting their days in court. And luckily for everyone, winning. A court in Yokohama this week found TEPCO and the Japanese government liable for the resulting consequences of the meltdown that keeps on giving in Fukushima. Close to $4 million is being rewarded to 152 plaintiffs for what the judge called a serious mistake and failure on TEPCO's part. And this isn't the first win in court for the people, it's actually the 5th, with more lawsuits in the pipeline. Now, I'm no legal expert, but I do understand the idea of precedent. And the way things are going, how long do you think before TEPCO runs out of money to pay all these lawsuit damages? Sooner rather than later, I hope. Because of TEPCO's continuous need to hide facts and deny reality, I've long called for the corporate death penalty to be assessed to this garbage company so that we can get to some real mitigation at the Daiichi plant site instead of this robot and ice wall fantasy land they've been propagating on us the whole time. And like we talked about a few weeks ago, even nuclear cheerleaders like former NRC Chief Dale Klein agrees that TEPCO needs to clean their act up and provide real transparency to the people, or else they're going to have a long slog coming back from this. So how about this instead? We fire TEPCO once and for all. I mean, who are they helping? Themselves and their shareholders, that's it. And even then, as compensation payments mount, are the shareholders going to be happy for much longer? I don't think so. I mean, here it is, 8 years after the disaster began, and reality has yet to hit these clowns. But, like the proverbial pie in the face, oh, it's coming. And the reason why is because of what the Fuuka fighters have been doing all along. We live in a new post-Fukushima reality, and we acknowledge it. As a result, we have the truth and technology on our side to match our passion for compassion and eco-justice for all. See, you can join the team of meddling kids today if you haven't already. Fuuka fighters, what do you got to do? Take step one for yourself. Go to our website at OperationSaveTheEarth.com. Begin the journey for yourself there by getting caught up, right? You're behind. This is 8 years, right? And then once you're caught up and ready to sign up for our free weekly newsletter, just send me an email at info@OperationSaveTheEarth.com and I will put you on that mailing list. And then don't forget, we're also available on Twitter. Follow us at OSTE 8 Minutes, all spelled out. That's where you'll get the latest Fukushima news of the week, guaranteed. Now, which do you think will happen first? I'll report on another loss in the courts for TEPCO over this, or will someone do the right thing and pull the plug on them, please? I mean, we need real control and containment at the plant along with oversharing of info rather than smoke screens. Until that happens, we're all stuck at square one still to this day. So let's work together to shut them down so that our goal of living free of the nuclear nightmare can come true at last. So until next time, this is Dave saying peace and good fortune to everyone. Take care till then.
Thank you for joining the Age of Fission radio show. Please like, subscribe, and share on Spreaker.com or on the YouTube channel nutzforart, NUTZFORART. Send all comments and ideas to Lonnie Clark at ageoffission@gmail.com. We urge all, especially scientists and politicians, to follow the words of our beloved American icon, Mark Twain. Always do right. This will gratify some and astonish the rest.